You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
When it comes to like using the word failure, again, not to sound cliche, I think always had a pretty good relationship with that. And it comes from my mom kind of being like, you have a day, you get a day, you got to move on. And I don't know if that works for everybody, but it definitely works for me, you know, and learning about just like the industry and kind of learning when it's not personal and when it's just business.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm Alan Seals. You made it through that so well this time.
He does it every time, Allison. He purposely does stupid shit to make me laugh while we're doing the intro. So anyway.
I bet you nailed it.
Oh.
She nailed it. Thank you. So she's
Yeah.
Heather Vickery. I'm Alan Seals, and that's our guest, Alison Luff. But Heather and I started off as two perfect strangers who met by chance and embraced opportunity. So now you, the listener, get to listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks that they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success. So we've already heard a little bit from our guest. She sided with you.
Thank
you did well.
She's a smart lady.
She is. Alison Luff, our guest for this episode. You may have seen her lighting up the stage in hits like Waitress, Wicked, Les Mis, Matilda, Ghost the Musical, and Mamma Mia.
What?
Or maybe you caught her as the fearless singing pirate in Escaped Margaritaville. But that's not all. She's also taken her talents to the small screen with memorable roles in New Amsterdam, FBI, The Blacklist, and of course the Star's hit Heels. Now until July 21st, you can still catch her as Mrs. Walker in The Who's Tommy. Who? Tommy. Alison Luff, welcome to the Potty Pod. It's nice to have you again.
Thank you. It's good to be on here. I have to say, though, I was never on the blacklist, but I will take it.
Oh, shit,
I will
really?
take that credit. I was never on the blacklist, but I'll take it.
Oh,
Damn it, AI.
Alan.
All right.
Alan. He
AI
doesn't
can't
usually
be
mess
trusted.
up like
Don't
that.
run
That's good.
Dude,
know?
is there another Alison, like, Larf? Somebody similar who's on the blacklist?
Don't know her. Don't know.
Oh,
Oh, well.
Well,
Anyway.
maybe
I'll take
Alan
credit
has
for it.
just told the future, predicted the future.
There you go. We're just
Hey.
putting that out there. You are going to be on the blacklist.
Right.
Surprise, surprise, that's your next call.
Great.
Because me and that, anyway.
I'm embracing the opportunity
There you
that
go.
you said that.
There you go.
There
Intentional
you-
risk.
And
Now you'll know.
manifesting it.
When the opportunity presents, you'll say, "Oh, Alan told me it was coming."
Oh, right.
Yeah. It was supposed to be there. Well, I guess let's start generically then. What is your aversion? Do you have an aversion to accepting opportunities when they come that seem like a calculated risk like this? Because some people are like, their anxiety kind of kicks in, and I'm only using anxiety because I just saw Inside Out 2. So as a new parent,
she just got here, Alan.
I know. But Inside Out 2, they have an anxiety attack, and it's incredible. Anyway, go ahead.
I need to see it.
It's so good.
No, I can very strongly say I do not. I've never had an aversion to risk taking.
I
think that the best opportunities in my life and the most monumental career moves that have happened in my life have come from me saying no, or come from me being brave and just trusting my path and knowing I'm going to get there one way or another. The route is not the same for everybody. And so no, I've never been scared. I've never been scared to take a risk so far. Who knows? Things could change, but so far.
Do you
No,
know what I
okay.
love about what you just said is it's so counterintuitive to what most people would say. You said, I've never had a problem saying no. Most people would say saying yes. And I would love to you picked no. Why is that? Why? Like, that's a very cool way to approach that.
Well, thanks. I don't know. It's probably something my parents instilled in me. I give
Yeah.
them credit for everything. I think the first time I said, no, for lack of better words, I had just finished it was my third Broadway show. I just finished doing Scandalous on Broadway, which was a huge flop. I did Mamma Mia, and then I did Ghost, and then I did Scandalous, and I was auditioning, when we got our closing notice for Scandalous that was closing, a week after we got our notice or something like that. It was very quick, but we all saw it coming. I was in final callbacks, or I had my very first audition for Wicked. And I'd been, it was a dream role of mine to play Elphaba, and I was called in to audition for the understudy, standby, and the role. And that's kind of usually how they do it. And I had never done the show before. I had never auditioned for it before. And I went in, I felt like I had, and mind you, I didn't go to college. So I didn't have, when I first moved to the city in 2008, I didn't have a big college name to get me in the room to some of these big casting directors. And so I hadn't even been seen by Telsey all too much. And I had an audition for Wicked. I felt very sure in my bones that I was supposed to play the part someday, and really wanted to. Auditioned, had a great audition, and then I didn't hear anything. And I was like, okay. And then a few days later, I got a call from my agent saying, or I said, hey, is there any feedback for that? And I got a call from my agent saying, yeah, they actually are wondering if you're free to go to the dance call in like 4 hours for the understudy. And something inside me, I was really excited that, they were interested in that, but something inside of me sunk and just said, no, like you can't do
Wow.
that. No. I'm not a strong dancer. I'm not somebody that can, and they dance in Wicked. Like people are dancing. And when you're covering, you're dancing. And maybe that's not, crazy to some people, but that would be crazy to me. And I was dancing in Scandalous, but still it wasn't something that I was confident. It's not something that I was like, this is not where I'm going to thrive. This is not the area I'm going to thrive in. My work will not thrive here. So I said, no, I don't think I can go, especially in 4 hours. I'm not comfortable going. Like it would be something I had to really think about. Okay, well, do I want to understudy this and be in the ensemble and dance this one? I don't think I'm going to get it. I really don't. And I'm not somebody that won't go out for things if I don't think I'm going to get it. But I was like, this is not my path. This is not my path. I know it's not my path. So I said, you know what? Thank them, but I don't think I would really like to be considered for the standby or for the part. I'm not a super strong dancer, especially to go in without like pre-learning, the dance call from a friend or something. And they called my agent back and they said, well, she should be prepared that, it's not going to come along because it's really one of those things that a lot of times are cast as the understudy, then you're bumped up to the standby, and then you're bumped up to the part. You grow with the show. And I just trusted and I said, okay, I think that it's not meant to be then. I thought it was, but I don't think it's meant to be. I was 23. And sure enough, I turned down that call back, and a day later I got called back to for the standby and went in for my call back in front of all the creative team and booked the role.
Wow.
So that was the first time that I was like, you know what? I don't think that I'm supposed to be. And I had also was understudying for Mamma Mia, Ghost, and Scandalous. And I loved understudying. I learned so much from the people I understudied, but I also had another little gut thing inside me that said, okay, you're going to be either kind of pigeonholed into being an understudy, which is fantastic. But again, I knew I wasn't going to thrive dancing in an ensemble because I'm just not a very good dancer. And so that was the first time that I said no.
To something big. Too.
To something that I really, really, really wanted. Yeah. And I remember just kind of feeling like gutted and also just, okay, well, I really thought I was meant to be, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not supposed to be on that show. Maybe it's not meant to be.
That's crazy. And then I really enjoyed that you're saying no to specific things because it leaves it. Well, what I was kind of getting at was when you want something and you don't get it, then that failure, I put in air quotes, will then lead to the next thing that is happy or whatnot. But you're also taking that one step further by intentionally saying no and leaving the space open for other things without knowing what else is going to follow in behind you.
Yeah, I didn't have a show. My show was closing. I didn't have a job lined up or anything. But just, again, it's a gut thing,
Right. Well, how do you follow your gut? Like, do you... For me, Heather and I have talked about this, that like the negative stuff sort of pulls the back of your neck and the positive things sort of pull from your solar plexus.
Everyone's different. It's actually something I do professionally is help people figure out where their body holds their intuition so that they can make aligned decisions. And I do that through human design, but everybody's yes shows up differently. Do you have a tell in your body?
Well, just to speak on that, I read something the other day that I really loved that resonated with me that was like identifying the difference between anxiety and
Yeah.
intuition, right?
Yep.
Because I've always been very, very led by intuition. And I read that like the intuition will feel lower in you're going to know, obviously, you're going to be able to help me with this. Lower in your body, right? Tends to feel lower in your body, and anxiety tends to feel more frantic or more high up in your body for some people. And I was like, I wonder what that is, because I felt like last week in particular, I was all of a sudden having kind of, I was like, is this anxiety or is this intuition? And it was just mom related, being a
Yeah.
new mom, and little things of I'm a very imaginative person, so your imagination can go even
Oh, yeah.
crazier,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're a mom. I think my intuition comes from more of like an unwavering certainty that I'm supposed to be doing a self-assuredness
I love
that
that.
I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing. And it can mean that it's not always what I think it is, but it's just trusting that I'm a little speck of dust in this world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
trying to remove myself and like look at and pull myself out into the greater scope of things. And I go on a lot of hikes. I spend a lot of time in the woods.
Oh, that's good.
And I think that it's the trust that even if it's the wrong choice and my intuition happened to be anxiety and it steered me wrong, and I trusted my gut, but it wasn't right or something like that, then my path will
Take you
find
back.
its way.
Yeah.
It's a river, like a rock might, veer it one way, but it's going to all flow into
Yeah.
the body of water it's supposed to eventually. And so I treat my relationships that way. I try to, at least my marriage, that way. It's like a constant choice of yes, do I want to keep my bubble attached to you? Then that's a choice, and we just keep going along, and we're going to be bumping around. And now I'm on a tangent.
No, but I love it, and
I love this bubble idea.
It's a very cerebral approach. It's very similar to what I do and the work I do, and
cool.
It's interesting. How long have you been consciously aware that that's the way you do things? Can you remember? Because to me, that makes taking intentional risk a lot easier, because you're like, no, but I know.
I think it's a thing that I've kind of always had.
Always.
Young.
Yeah.
I think it definitely comes from my mom. It comes from her saying, she had this thing, and I always loved it. It was, she'd be like, if you're disappointed about something, or something like knocks you off your rocker, you have a day. Give yourself a day. You can be bummed about it. You can be sad, but after a day, you need to, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Like, and she's not somebody that's like, won't let you be sad, or like, like rub some dirt on it. She's somebody that's like, okay, we'll take your day and then move on, because you're just wasting time, or you're wasting this, and she was also somebody for, I don't have any family in the industry or anybody who's an actor or anything. I remember auditioning for something when I was a kid, and I was so bummed that I didn't get to play the goose in Charlotte's Web. I was, gutted. And it's the one and only time I've ever cried that I didn't get a part. My mom was like, no. You can't cry if you don't get a part. Like, you got to be happy for the people that do, or you got to just trust that you're the best person to play the part that you got, and you need to own that and do that. And that always stuck with me. And and she was just always somebody that would, it sounds so cliche, but she would always say, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. And when that's ingrained in you, I think that it really did. And she didn't just tell me this. I watched her live that way, right? Like, as an example, I watched her do that. And I just think it's easier to think that way than to think the opposite. And I'm going to choose the easy way that makes me happier if I can.
I mean, it is easier, right? Because it takes so much effort to be negative, or to fear the worst, or to think you can control everything that's happening. Because the only thing, I call it radical responsibility, the only thing you can control is your own reaction, response, and behavior. So that surrender is radical responsibility for the only thing you can manage. And I'm so glad that you have a child you're passing this down onto. What a gift.
Thanks. And it's habitual too. I learned
Super.
that, I'm like, oh gosh, I can get into these, I can definitely be somebody that wants to micromanage or control or do things a certain way, and I definitely like, and somebody that can put expectation on something, and my, expectation is the thief of all joy. And the second I learned that, and we still have those and everything, but I realized, it can be very habitual both ways, whether to choose to, everything happens for a reason, or get in that mindset of like negative think.
For sure.
That is very interesting that you're focusing, I mean, and I guess intentionally focusing on the positive and just touching on the negative, acknowledging it.
Yeah, you
and
gotta
let it sit
feel it
with
to
you.
heal it.
Ooh, I like that. Feel it to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah.
All right, that's getting tattooed on my butt next to everything else smart that Heather says.
Maybe not on your butt.
I was like, just let Crystal know it was not my idea.
Well, I guess the
closer to your
feel it to
side.
heal
Where are you going
it.
to put it on your butt? You know what? You do you, and I support that.
There
and
you
I'm
go.
sorry if I had any judgment towards that. That's
Yeah, don't judge me, Allison. Come on.
Feel it to heal it.
Feel it to heal it and not
Love
my
that.
butt.
I've
The
never
sad
heard
feelings. Sad the feelings. Well, so talking about sad feelings, I guess let's jump to the present for a second, because the Who's Tommy is unfortunately closing on July 21st, and you originated this role in this revival, and I guess talk about that whole process, because the whole like it's closing and it's sad and we'll touch on it, we'll feel it to heal it, like we'll get there, but I want to back up because you just became a new mom, which if I have the timing right, you were pregnant while doing the out of town, then gave birth, then started rehearsals for Broadway?
Yeah. So I found out I was pregnant an hour and a half before our very first rehearsal in Chicago.
Ooh.
Okay, so I saw you in Chicago in this
Oh,
show.
you did?
Yeah, it's taken. I've been here. I'm like, I saw the show. Was it Allison? And I don't have my play. Now my friend that I go to the theater with is gonna be like, I
You
told you to
definitely
keep
did.
all your playbills.
Yeah. If you saw it in Chicago, you saw me. I
Yeah.
was never out. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. It was. I loved it. So I think it's
Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really cool doing that with my little baby inside me. That was
Yeah.
awesome. Because
So,
I can get like a little stage fright at times, and it was really good. That helped a lot, and it was really cool. I was like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I have a little baby. But so yeah, I found out I was pregnant an hour and a half before our first rehearsal, and very, very early on. Like I wasn't even. There was no way of knowing I was pregnant yet. My body did not tell me yet, other than my intuition knowing I was. I took a test, and it, was faint. It shouldn't have even shown up yet. So I was like a couple weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And I knew, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I'm so excited.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
I did it up until I entered like my 5th month of pregnancy, and then we finished in Chicago, and I remember Des calling me. Man, I was somewhere in my 3rd trimester saying like, so we are going Broadway. Like,
So director Des Mackinoff.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to be, can you do it? And I was like, well, when are you thinking? He said, we're thinking of starting rehearsals around this time. It's all very tentative because it's not announced. Are you going to be able to do it? And I was like, Des, I don't know. You're going to have to ask my unborn son. I was like, because as that would have it, we would be starting 4 weeks postpartum. And I was like, what if he's 2 weeks late? I was like, I can't start 2 weeks after I have a baby. 4 weeks is already absurd.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was getting at, because you're nuts, but we'll get there. Continue.
Yeah,
continue.
I am. Yeah. And I was like, but he could come 2 weeks early, and then, hey, I have a whole 6 weeks, whopping 6 weeks. He didn't. Like a true Capricorn, he came exactly on his due date.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then, yeah, I did it.
cannot
I started
imagine.
4 weeks after.
So you were 4 weeks postpartum.
Cannot imagine. I was still trying to figure out how to get a shower in 4 weeks after my first baby.
Well,
Allison still hasn't showered. But we don't talk about that.
yeah. this isn't looking great. I literally put mascara to cover up some of these grays because I didn't have time to do my hair before this podcast.
You're gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Stop.
No, true story. Hey, if you need to cover up some grays, use mascara. Don't look too close. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna be sweating black and during the show tonight. It's gonna be really beautiful. It was great because I had a beautiful birth. I had I don't have any baby to compare it to, but he seemed like he was a really easy baby. He is a really easy, you know what I mean? Easy baby. I stayed with my parents. So I went and had the baby in Texas because I wanted to do it out of hospital at a birthing center. Wow. And so I went that route. And so the first 4 weeks before we came up to New York, it was great because we were staying with my parents. My husband and I were staying with my parents. And so, I would get up to feed him. He'd, wake up every 2 hours like a newborn does, and you feed them. And then around 5:30 or 6 a.m., he'd get up for his feed. And my parents would always be up by then because they're parents and they wake up at 6 a.m., and have their coffee. So they would call it coffee with Levi. They'd be like, give us Levi. And then they would have their coffee and hang out with him. And I would go back to sleep for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, but I would sleep so soundly because, he was downstairs with my parents. Safe. I knew he was safe. Yeah. So I think that, and my husband and I would have that in the morning, every morning for the first couple of weeks. So that was, I think, a huge game changer. And then my parents also came to New York, and my mom stayed with us until we opened Tommy. So my mom and my husband and my dad, they would all trade off, and they would come to rehearsal every hour and a half and give me the babe. I'd feed him and give him back, or he'd hang out with us in rehearsal, or I'd wear him.
Oh my God, you wear him during rehearsal?
I love that they let you.
And Des was cool with that.
Oh my gosh. When Levi would come to rehearsal and Des wouldn't see him, he would get offended. He'd be like, where is he? I'm like, oh, I just fed him and he, he's asleep now. What? I didn't see him. Like, he would be so mad if Levi came for me to feed him and he wouldn't make an entrance or something. And he's a really, he wasn't a fussy baby. So I brought him to the meet and greet. He was around, and he was kind of our little show baby because I did the show pregnant, and the cast had this attachment to him, and but the producers were incredible. That was kind of the one thing I said, I can do this, but I got to live really close to the theater, and I don't want to, I have a idea of how I want to feed him, and I don't want to, I want to feed him through me and by myself, mm-hmm. and so he's got to be around, and he takes precedent. And they were like, of course, and so he was always around, and it was really fortunate. And I would come home and my mom would make a homemade meal, which would keep me healthy. And, so it was a group effort, but that's how it happened,
I love knowing that there are theater companies out there that are allowing that and enabling that. And
I know,
it just feels so different than what the world does. So especially this country.
That's what a lot of people say. And that's something that, a girlfriend of mine who, I won't say what show she's on, but she was like, I can't believe that they let him there. Like, she's a standby for something. They don't even let her baby come backstage, like when she's not on, to feed him, right? And I'm like, oh, no. And I was like, also, you need to not ask permission.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Yeah.
You need to just say, this is the way it's going to be. And now I'm seeing that more. And it's our creative team was incredible. And I was just kind of like, hey, look, I can walk away from this, or this is going to be how it goes. And that's how it went. And it really worked out.
So how far into your pregnancy were you performing?
I went into my 5th month. So I forget what that is. I wasn't quite in my 3rd trimester, but I was towards the end of my 2nd trimester, I think it was. Yeah.
So
I had a bump. They had to keep, they had to take out the costumes. My belt started to get tighter. My boobs looked amazing.
I'll bet.
But everybody would just be like, whoa, watching my body change. People would be like, oh my gosh, you have a bump now. You have a bump. It was exciting because he was our little baby backstage. And And then I got to a certain point where I was starting to get nervous because I think it was like around 18 weeks or 19 weeks where his hearing started to developing. There's a lot of gunshots in the show. So then I would try to, I'd be like, I'm not going to be backstage during this time. Like, I want to make sure it's not too loud, or like, this is a weird show. I was very like, so I would like go backstage. It's a loud show. So then I was kind of nervous. And luckily we stopped around, I had 20 something weeks. And that was like right when they're like, your baby can hear everything. I'm like, okay, cool. Good thing the show is ending because he doesn't need to keep hearing
show too.
Yeah, it really is.
I know. It's very loud. It's very, very loud.
Yeah.
Did Pete Townsend come back and was like, listen, we need to just turn this up?
No, that was Des. He likes things loud. And a really funny story is in Chicago, when we were working with the guns for the first time, everyone is they treat it very, the safety is utmost importance, of course. And everyone has safety, like ear safety, earphones and earplugs. Thank you. And, you're getting a lesson with it and you're learning about everything and do's and don'ts, and you're learning about the weapon and you're learning about everything. And it's a prop and there's no like hole or anything, but they're still, they're really, really loud, and you can load them to a certain amount. Like it's called a quarter load or a half load or this. And Des would just keep saying like, what's that? He'd be like, it's a quarter load. It would be so loud, you guys, so loud. He'd be like, let's do a half load. Oh. He would just keep making them louder. And then I look over at him and he has his AirPods in his ears because he's like, was doing something. And I was like, Des, I think you should take your AirPods out before you make any more decisions. And he's like, huh? I was like, your AirPods.
I can't hear you.
I was like, this is too loud. And he, I would always give him shit like that.
I love that.
He would take it. But I was just like, you cannot make any more of these decisions, please. Because you like things really loud and I'm terrified.
How was it?
Go ahead.
I was just curious how it was working at the Goodman.
Oh, gosh. Do you live in Chicago?
I live in Chicago, and I have had season tickets to the Goodman for 23 years. So I've seen everything that's come through. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, working there was definitely like a bucket list moment for me. I've always wanted to work there because it's, it's the Goodman.
Yeah.
I've heard about it my whole life. I loved working there. I loved the people were awesome. The crew there is so cool, and like, they're just really close and awesome and nice. And some of the crew even came with us.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which was cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. I loved Chicago. I toured there with Mamma Mia and Wicked. And I loved spending time in Chicago or in Margaritaville. Did we go to Margaritaville? Yeah, I think we went to Chicago for Margaritaville too. So I really liked just spending time in Chicago. We were literally like right across the street from the theater. It was really convenient. And yeah, I loved it. I'd go back there in a heartbeat for sure.
We would take you. We would love to have you back.
Well, so what I was leading into a while ago was, you went through this process and it was just kismet. Everything just perfectly lined up to get the family going how you wanted it and have everything happening. And then now as happens in show's life cycle, it closes at some point. So then going back to the original point of like just touching on the negative or touching on the sadness, I know some casts find out, there's been horror stories about like on a 2-show Saturday, they'll find out after their first show that night show is their last show or something like in really extreme cases. Right. But so for you, at least you guys were given this notice and then you had several weeks, I think, I don't remember how long, a full month, I think to play it out.
We had 4 weeks.
So like, what does that go through? Talk about like what happens inside a cast when you're noticed, especially something that's this big and this important to so many people. And I heard one review of it unofficially called it's boomer heaven, right? So there's a huge fan base for this. So like, what's going through that?
Well, it's for me personally, it's there's a mix, right? So we have 16 Broadway debuts in this cast, which makes it even more thrilling and exciting and special. The producers worked really hard not to mess with the alchemy too much of our Chicago production. So not only do we have 16 Broadway debuts in this cast, people were getting their equity cards in this cast. And it's really special to be a part of that. And then there's some of us who have, been in multiple shows and have had our closing notices and been through this experience before and gotten those emails that say, hey, we're having a cast meeting. We encourage everyone to be there. And so, and then there's two sides of the spectrum of people that read reviews and look at numbers, or how the show's selling every whatever day that is. I am one of the people that doesn't read reviews or look at numbers. I just can't do that. And so, but you can also see how you're selling by looking at the, audience every night. And I was like, gosh, I really I feel like it doesn't, I've been in some shows that you can see that it looks empty and it doesn't feel that way with Tommy. But, I think that we were really fortunate to have 4 weeks, which is awesome. And I was expecting to going into that meeting. I knew when I got that we got an email saying, hey, we'd like to have a company meeting and we encourage everybody to be there. I was like, oh shoot, I think we're getting our closing notice. I think it's awesome that we get 4 weeks because it is a stacked season on Broadway and there is so much to see. And I think that we were the show to see for a while. And then there's all these other shows that people want to see too. And so I hope that everyone can get there in 4 weeks because it's a great show. And, I think it's different. I think it's timely. I think it's supposed to be there, be here and be told. But the overall consensus of how everyone reacted was actually rather positive, especially for a cast of so many people who have never experienced this before. I think everyone's just grateful to have the month and to be able to give it a closeout that we deserve. All that being said, processing it is so different, right? This is my 8th Broadway show, and I'm usually someone who's very much like, okay, on to the next, here we go. And as much as I did have that attitude, I was still like, oh man, I'm kind of bummed. I wish it was at least through the summer or through this, especially with a kid, you're like, oh man, we got through all this and now we're just starting to find our groove. But then on the flip side of that, I was like, oh cool, I get to be home for bedtime now.
Yeah.
I was excited about that. Yeah, it's so many mixed emotions. And so I think the cast and the crew overall are bummed that it's closing, but for the most part, I feel like has maintained a really great positive attitude of, well, we get 4 weeks, let's go out with a bang. It would have done such a huge disservice to us in the show had we not had the opportunity to have 4 more weeks,
Absolutely.
I'm one for the people that are understudying that won't get to go on, or, I kind of hold space for that because I've been in that position and it's a lot of hard work. And then to do that and not get and have dates and then us not get to those dates, I think that's a real bummer. But
dates to go on. Yeah.
Yeah. People had dates to go on and, and you planned for that. And so I think that's a bummer, but everyone has a really great attitude about it, to be honest.
Well, and with your approach of all things are leading in the right direction, do you find yourself just really curious to see what happens next for you? Yeah,
I'm actually really excited. I'm excited and open to whatever is next. I've not been auditioning because I've been tied to this show. We'll see. I've had a couple auditions now that we found out the notice, but I'm also, again, I don't know if it's because I've been doing it since I was a kid. I have learned to really welcome, and if anything came out of COVID for our industry and everyone else's industry, I've learned to really welcome the breaks. And I've learned to, okay, how do I thrive and make myself better in that space? Especially now that I have a little boo and that I'm like, I don't have a break now. I have a different job, but I'm kind of really stoked to full-time that for a second until the next thing.
Yeah. If you can handle a break, if that works for your family and for your lifestyle, then I'm sure it's probably well received.
Yeah.
We're
going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
So I'm curious, Alan kind of knows a little bit more of your background, but our listeners probably don't. And so you said you've been acting since you were quite little. You didn't go to school for it. Can you share sort of when this, for lack of a better term, showed up intuition-wise? You're like, this is the thing I'm going to do. And what sort of chances you embraced that led you down this path that brought you to New York City in 2008, all that good stuff?
Yeah. I first found out I wanted to do this when my parents took me to the pre-Broadway run of Beauty and the Beast, which was in Houston. And I saw it and immediately was like, I want to do that. And then,
I know that feeling.
yeah. And then sang around. I mean, I don't remember this really. I remember seeing the show, but I don't remember, telling my parents this and all that. But I said, I want to do this. And I remember singing all the time and being a ham and cheese sandwich all the time.
I've never
like
heard
literally.
that.
And
Oh,
so, I come from a family that nobody is in the industry. So my mom literally went to the library and looked up, how do you get involved?
Wow.
And then she was like, okay, so you can audition and we need to print up sheet music and put it in a binder and we have to take a picture that's this size and and so I was really fortunate that my parents, put me in community theater, which led to my first professional theater because that director that I worked with went and did professional theater. And so I started professional theater when I was 9, and it's just all I ever wanted to do. I was so laser focused and did nothing else and didn't have any interest in doing anything else, and felt very confident and had no reservations of sacrificing going to prom and going to homecoming and going to graduation and things like that because I had 2 shows and I wanted to move to New York in high school. And my mom was like, because they were doing Spring Awakening in New York,
Right.
on Broadway. And I was like, I have to
Steven on
move
the
to New
show.
York.
Yeah.
They're doing Spring Awakening and I'm a teenager mom. I'm right for this. And she's like, okay, you're going to finish and then you can go. You have money saved, you can go. I support you. If you want to go, go. My parents had never even been to New York until I moved there. Another crazy fact.
Because they're still in Texas?
They're still in Texas.
Right.
And yeah, so neither of them had ever been to New York. I went when I was 16 with my high school boyfriend and his mom and brother for a few days, but my parents had never been, but they fully supported me. They were like, again, they had an unwavering trust that this is her journey. I believe this. And they supported me emotionally. They couldn't do so financially, but they did emotionally, and they gave me sense of how to save money and how to get there and how to work for it. And so I saved all my money. I moved to New York in 2008. I had an audition for a show that paid nothing. It was an equity showcase, so it paid, $100 maybe to get a subway card or something like that. And I wasn't even equity. But I went there with an audition for that. The next day I had a call back. The next day I booked it, and that's what got me my agent, and that's what got me the next thing, and and the next thing and the next thing. And so that was kind of my path in. And then a few years ago, this will blow your mind. A few years ago, again, nobody in my family is in the industry, has ever been an actor, music, nothing. A few years ago, my parents are looking through a scrapbook or something, or kind of find all these old things while they're going through the attic. My dad finds my birth announcement. And my birth
a newspaper birth announcement?
No, that my parents made. My dad made a birth announcement. Okay. And it was a ticket.
Stop.
That says it was a theater ticket. And my parents didn't even necessarily go to theater before me. And it said starring Alison Luff, or it's the show It's a Girl, starring Alison Luff.
I have chills.
And the ticket, the seat was my weight, and the row was my height, and it said no refunds. It said it was a Broadway ticket, and my dad found this a few years ago. I was like, what? Do you remember this? He's like, no, I don't remember this. I made this when you were born. I don't.
Wow.
How bonkers is
Definitely
that?
destined. What was that first professional show when you were 9?
It was Wizard of Oz.
Great
I
first
played
show.
Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz.
You were
You
Dorothy?
were Dorothy, of course.
Yeah.
So and you came to New York for the showcase right after high school, you said, right?
I did. So, well, actually a little more than or a little less than a year after I graduated high school. So I auditioned for schools, but I had a year and a half work of I had a year and a half of work lined up after high school of professional work of doing summer stock and just theaters around the area that I had worked at, growing up. And they were roles I really wanted to play. And when I auditioned for when I auditioned for college, I mentioned that to all the colleges, like I have reservations. I don't know if I want to go to school for 4 years because I've been saving money. I've been doing this professionally. And if I can't even audition for shows, like, oh, that's going to be hard for me. And I have a year and a half of like these roles I really want to play, and they're here, and I have contracts for them. And unanimously, every school I auditioned for said, go to New York.
Yeah.
Just do it. And
I mean, if the opportunities were there, you don't squander them.
Yeah. And then multiple, which I thought was really cool because I'm like, hey, that gives me faith in like the fact that, they're doing what they want you to succeed. And even if you're not their student yet. And most of them held my scholarships for me even. Wow. And they're like, look, if you want to come back at this amount of time, you can. But so I moved there. I graduated in 2007 and I moved to New York in 2008. So I finished doing the work there and saved up my money. And
2007, 2008, there was a writer's strike happening then too. So
I wasn't that much in the loop. I was just looking up backstage and going to open calls,
Like, I remember that because that was when I moved to New York as well in 2007 because there was a lull in auditions. The fact that you got where you got, how you got during the writer's strike when things are shut down and people aren't auditioning is mind-blowingly impressive.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
The girls got chops.
Insane. That's insane. So then what was the timeline behind the first national tour of Wicked too? Because that's no small feat.
I mean,
so yeah, that was, I moved to New York 2000. I'm really bad with dates, y'all. I moved September 3rd, 2008. And then I did I did a show at Gallery Players, which was the equity showcase. And that's what got me my agent. I auditioned. I was a part-time nanny. And then I got my equity card at Theater Aspen that summer.
Sounds terrible. Sounds horrible. Yeah.
Awful place. Just awful.
Horrible.
Especially for somebody who likes hiking. It was good. Fell in love with Colorado. I was like, why am I not living here doing theater? But anyways, spent the summer doing theater there. Actually went back another summer into theater there too. I love that place. And then I booked, Mamma Mia was like my first big contract, the tour of Mamma Mia. And I auditioned multiple times for that as well, because that was one that you just keep getting called in. And then, it's like another Wicked, although Wicked worked out. I just had to go in once. But so I did Mamma Mia, and then I did Mamma Mia for a year, and then we had a layoff, and I auditioned for some things regionally. Here's another taking chances. I auditioned for things. We had a 2-week layoff, and I auditioned for something regionally. And for the Mamma Mia tour, I was in the ensemble, and I was understudying Sophie and Allie. And on that layoff, I auditioned for Next to Normal at a regional theater in Florida. And I was cast as Natalie, like the daughter. That's what her name is, right? The daughter. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to leave the tour. I'm going to leave this cushy contract, and I'm going to go do a regional show that's going to close in, a month.
Wow.
And I put in my notice because I was like, I want to play a role. I want to play a lead. And I feel like it's the right move to do. So I put in my notice, and I think I was 21. And that when my agent called to put in my notice for me, casting said, well, hold on one second. Got off the phone, called them back and said, does she want to make her Broadway debut? Her track is opening up on Broadway.
What?
So that's how I made my Broadway debut in Mamma Mia.
Wow.
You're just like, nah.
Putting in my notice on the tour. to go do something regionally and getting to then go to the Broadway company. And then I auditioned for Ghost and got Ghost right away. And so was only in the Broadway company for a couple months before I put in my notice and went to Ghost. And then, one thing, and then Ghost was, after that was Scandalous. And then, like I said, then that was Wicked audition and
Wow.
for the tour. And that was, I think I booked that when I was 20. I think I was 23.
This was all before you could rent a car.
I know, right?
Damn it.
I don't even have a license, y'all.
What?
There's
Even
a
in Texas, you didn't get your license in high school?
wonky fun fact. It's another thing that I didn't have time to go to driver's ed and do things like that. I was always working.
Performing.
And so it wasn't and where I lived and where the theaters were, my parents were never going to feel comfortable with me driving alone after a show late at night from downtown Houston to Spring, where I lived, at 17, 18 years old. There, no way. They were like, no, we're driving you. That's, they weren't going to let me be alone. And, it wasn't the best area of town where some of the theaters were. So, and then I moved to New York and I didn't need one. And now I have a kid and I live in an RV and I need to get a license.
Wait, you live in an RV?
Yeah. So whenever we're not, so I have this apartment for while I'm doing Tommy, but I moved out of New York during the pandemic and bought an RV with my husband and renovated it and have been doing that life.
Wow.
Wait, wow. Where is the best place? Where's your favorite place you've traveled to so far in the RV?
Ooh, probably Granby, Colorado is really cool.
Oh,
I loved that. We went to this place called Granby, Colorado, and it was on a lake. And then we went on this hike, and we drove the RV up to the trailhead, parked it, and then went on this 8-mile hike to this place called Strawberry Lake. Which, funny enough, when I was in labor, they said, this exercise that I heard to do was like picturing a place. I don't think I ever really used that exercise during labor, but they're like, picture your place, like your safe place, your happy place. And it was Strawberry Lake. So I would probably say Strawberry Lake was the coolest place.
oh wow.
That's so cool.
That is so
I've never
interesting.
heard a story like that before.
Yeah.
That is really neat. I mean, that's just embracing the opportunity of, not being tied to New York. And then now one of the silver linings, I think, of what has happened in the last few years is that the industry is comfortable now with self-tapes, remote auditions, whatever the case is. And I know there's a whole camp of people. I acknowledge that there's a camp of people who can't stand self-tapes because they're hard. It makes you have to be everything else.
A love-hate relationship. There's pros to it and there are major cons to it. For sure. It's just really annoying when you have to, obviously I didn't even have headphones before this, like if for somebody who's not very great with technology, it can be, or people that don't have a reader. Like I'm lucky. I have a husband who's an actor and I always have a built-in reader, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Now, how do you balance his professional career with yours and a baby? No pressure.
Two careers and a baby, starring Tom Selleck.
Again, communication.
Yeah.
I mean, the classic communication, right? Trust. And for me, it's finding grace for one another because it is hard. It's hard being two actors. It's hard having two different careers, two different trajectories, two different, paths, being in two different places in your career. Like it's crazy sometimes. But leaving space for where each other is at, and stepping up when you have to, and taking the back seat when you have, when it's right. And I think that's something that is like a constant effort that we have to put in, and something that we have to constantly learn and grow with. But I will say it's interesting since we met. So far, it's kind of always aligned that when I'm working, he's kind of in between gigs. And then whenever he's working, I am miraculously in between my gigs. It kind of keeps falling that way, which has been really great. But it's not always going to be that way. And it isn't always that way. But for the most part, it has been. And, I know that was a big that was a big thing with having a kid, of, you know, things that my husband and I would talk about, of like, okay, well, it was important for my husband also to be like, I know that I'm going to want to be with him all the time, but I also know not to speak for him,
Of
but
course.
primally, I'm going to want to also be the one working and doing these things, and you're doing this job. And so we are figuring out that balance.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really hard for me to miss bedtime, you know, and he's taking care of bedtime right now, but he's been auditioning like crazy, and now our show's closing. So I'm
There
like,
you go.
what's about to happen is I know exactly what's about to, well, we say that, but you never know what's going to happen. But so far, it's kind of always worked out that we really kind of take turns,
I
which
love
has
that.
been a real blessing. I don't know how that's worked out, but it has.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
cool. All right, one more quick break. Hang on a second. All right, here's the rest of the episode. Now, having a lot of solid experience in TV and film, and then Broadway, given that, you know, with a few months left to see, or a few weeks left to see Tommy, are you going to focus on one avenue over the other, or just kind of like unplug for a bit? Because like going back into rehearsals are some of the hardest part of putting up a show, and 4 weeks postpartum.
It's insane.
is insane.
Yeah.
So I think you would want to just like nap for a hot minute. But
Yeah.
then what?
You know, we've been fortunate too the last few months. My husband's been filming things here and there, and luckily we have family in New Jersey that can help with the baby if he's filming and I'm working and things like that. And so now when I'm about to be on this break, I definitely, I feel fortunate that I can embrace this break,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna allow myself to embrace the break. But if I just, again, it's that trust. I know when the right thing is gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Heels, the TV show that we've talked about before, it's actually got picked up by, or it's going to be on Netflix. So the first two
Congrats.
seasons are going to be on Netflix. Thank you. And so hopefully enough eyeballs get on that, you know, that they'll want to renew again, and that would be awesome. And maybe we could get a third season or something. That would be, you know, that'd be a dream.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. I filmed something else called Power Book 2 Ghost, which is also on Stars, and that's currently airing. And so I'm just going to kind of chill back and kind of let those things that I've already done, see what happens with those, and obviously audition. But when it comes to like what avenue I'm going to go about, I kind of always just take the path presented to me. But
Yeah.
I, as we've talked about, I don't have a problem saying,
No.
I have the luxury right now
Yeah.
of saying no. And it would have to be the right job, theater wise, for me to take it, and timing wise with my family. And, you know, TV and film, you can have longer days, but you have 2 days off on the weekend, and you've got more you know, you have a bit more of a flexible schedule. Theater is, not to show the secrets, but theater is way harder.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
like,
I was going to
and
ask.
just it's so much, it takes so much more, you know, in my opinion. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's my favorite thing to do. I absolutely love doing it, but I think it's just got to be the right gig, and I'm just gonna take the path presented to me.
Yeah.
I want to work, and I definitely have. I had a working mom, and I like being a working mom. But it's got to be the right thing. You know, I don't know what it'll be. Whether I also want to focus on our music. My husband and I have a band together,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have an album out, and I want to play out more, and so I want to do some more writing, and we'll just see. I don't know.
Tell us about the
Sounds
album
cool.
really quickly. Like, yeah, when did you do that?
We recorded that in 2019, released it in 2020 or 2021. I don't know. All, you know, around that time, everything blends together.
Sure.
I'm like, what year? But yeah, we have an album out. It's available on all streaming platforms. Our band is called Big Sur, as in the place, BIGSUR, Big Sur Bound. And our album is called Bones. And again, it's on all streaming platforms, and we have an Instagram as well that we need to show up more on. Maybe that's on the to-do list.
Awesome.
But yeah.
I'm looking.
I know we're
up.
both looking it up right now.
I'm looking at Big
That's what we're
Sur
doing.
Bound.
That's
I was
cool.
like-
Now, did you two always know you wanted to make music together, or did that happen sort of serendipitously as well?
And babies.
That was to to make a long story short, we have a absolutely insane story. We met a week late. We met doing a show that he wasn't even supposed to do. He replaced somebody last minute, the first day of tech rehearsals, a week before our first preview.
Wow.
For a show. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to try to make this very brief. Along the line with saying no again. Here we go. I had just finished Matilda on Broadway, and the opportunity to do Les Mis on Broadway came up, and the opportunity to go do a show to play Fantine in Les Mis came up, and an opportunity to go originate a role at Pasadena Playhouse in this musical called Breaking Through came up. And I was like, you know what? I want to go do this show in California because I want to originate. It's a show that I play guitar. I want to go do this. Needless to say, the show did not break through. And so I said no to something that was more promising job to go do this. However, I met my husband doing it. He wasn't supposed to do it a week later. He replaced somebody, and we met a week later. We decided to get married.
What?
What?
Yeah. I was our first kiss. The first night we said, I love you. And the night we decided we should get married. A month later, when the show closed, we eloped, which was also around the same time Les Mis called and said, hey, do you want to come do it? Do you want to do it next? And I was like, yes. So again, saying no, being brave, taking chances. Wow. Was it the path to be my first original Broadway lead? No, but I met my husband doing it. And that was over 8 years ago. And so to answer your question about the music, we were playing the singer-songwriter on the show. We both always wrote music, and we started sharing our music, and then we would start writing together, and we would find that like songs that I started writing 5 years ago would match songs that he had written, and we put them together, and we kind of came up with this huge album, and we wrote new songs, and we were had wonderful love and just made music together. Wow. And so, yeah, music has been, we call it our third. It's kind of always been like this thing. In fact, we wrote a song the night we eloped called Little Lamb about our future child. And we were never like, we're going to have babies. It was always something like, maybe we'll have kids. I don't know. We'll see. And then, of course, a few years down the road, it turned into, yeah, probably. And then, about a year ago, we were like, yeah, we do want kids. So, and
you did that quick.
Yeah,
too.
Little Lamb is about a future baby. We did that. Well, we were married for.
But I mean, from deciding
over 7 years.
Yeah, we really want to having a 6-month-old.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we were very fortunate. Yes, yeah, we were. That happened pretty great for us. So
I love Jesus. That. Wow, well, what a love story. Whew. A weekend. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's old school.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a book. Maybe you should write a novel that's not, fully made up.
Right.
Just write it all about you. Call it Love and Babies in a Week.
But it teaches you a lot about yourself, which is where I came up with the whole, it is I always have reservations now telling people sometimes our love story because it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without it.
Sure.
Like I said, your work and your choices, and you're showing up, and you're having a mind of intentionality and what what things are meant to be, and choosing to attach your bubble to somebody and grow with them. And
I love your bubble. I think that's such a great analogy.
Work,
Yeah.
Huh. I am so impressed, and it's crazy. Okay, so then I think you've answered this partially already, but just overall, do you have a relationship? What is your relationship with failure? And don't say you get married after a week.
My relationship with failure. I think something that I've learned about myself is that I can obviously be really hard on myself, and I can be a perfectionist, and you can't really be a perfectionist in art because there's no such thing as, perfection, probably in anything. I don't know. I can be really hard on myself and just be really I can be very disappointed in myself. But when it comes to using the word failure, again, not to sound cliche, I think I've always had a pretty good relationship with that. And it comes from my mom kind of being you have a day.
Yeah.
You get a day, and then you gotta move on. And I don't know if that works for everybody, but definitely works for me, you know, and learning about just like the industry and kind of learning when it's not personal and when it's just business. Took a long time for me to, I've never felt like I've been in the cool kids club, you know, for the industry. I think maybe it's because I didn't go to a fancy school or I didn't do these things that kind of got you there. But for a while I think I was like, am I getting overlooked? Am I getting this? And I don't know. Now I'm just on a tangent, but my relationship with failure, I think is just trying to not cling to it and just, again, let it, okay, you know, be bummed and then
do its thing.
Move on. Because I could be really disappointed in myself. Like I can have a bad show and just be, Des said something that I love, and he always would tell us in rehearsals, don't look back. Like if you mess up, and it sounds so cliche, and it sounds like something that is a no-brainer, but something that has really resonated with me that I'm like gonna use for a while, because I have a tendency to do that, and I have a tendency to like not sing something the way that I liked in a show, or mess up, or go to the white room and not remember something and then cling to it and be like, oh, so it's going to be one of these shows. I'm just going to have a horrible show and I have people here and, oh, so it's just going to be such a bad show. I'm having a bad show, versus being like, oh no, I messed up and now we're on the train and it has kept moving and we're moving and don't look back. And I love that. So I'm going to try to take that with me.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Just remember that there are no mistakes, right? That it's everything you've already been saying. So you're going to, quote unquote, mess something up here in this one thing, but there's maybe a reason. Like maybe, I don't know, right? What's the reason that thing it led you down this path versus getting it, nailed it?
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's something I have to learn with motherhood too, because
yes, friend.
You and with this role, right? If Mrs. Walker is, you know, I feel like the result of her son being the way it is from just a couple clumsy decisions, like split decisions of how to, you know, wrong split decisions. And so I do find that, like, gosh, I don't want to mess up. Like I want to be like the best mom. I want to be this, I want to be that. And I'm like, okay, perfection doesn't exist.
That's
so
right.
What, you know, and I remember a couple days ago, like just being in, you know, Matthew and I, my husband, we have really beautiful communication, which is probably why we are the way that we are and our love is the way it is. But it doesn't, you know, we still have our moments of discord. And I remember just being like, oh gosh, I wasn't my highest self when I was like talking to him in that moment, and Levi was right there. And I was so like ashamed and disappointed in myself for like being snippy, you know, just like being human.
You know, I was going to say,
snippy.
human. Yeah.
And, but I think that that's something that I'm going to learn a lot from this new stage of my life of, you know,
I will tell you,
not being perfect and being like, okay, well,
I think the best parents that I know recognize that they're going to make mistakes. They admit that they've made them. They apologize when it's necessary, and they don't hold it against themselves or their kids. Holding yourself to a perfectionist state as a parent will lead to an awful lot of trauma.
Something that I've leaned into too along those lines is, after I am snippy with my kids or I get overly upset with them because of something else completely
it's not usually
unrelated
their fault.
to them.
Yeah.
they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and all they want is my attention to hang out and play and be loved. Yep. And so I've just come out of a tumultuous conversation with somebody else that's put me in a bad mood, and they get the brunt of it. Is that I go back afterwards and I explain what happened. I tell them it's not their fault. I say that, like, I'm not perfect. I just try to be transparent about the fact that they did not cause me to be upset.
Yeah, you're not.
And it seems to, my younger one especially is very, very emotion on the sleeve sort of guy. And he gets it. He gets it a lot. He seems to understand it, because at first he was like, yeah, I thought you didn't love me. He said that one. I was like, no.
And then you're just like, you're heartbroken. Yeah.
I'm like, I will never stop. I just get angry sometimes. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And my best friend said something that I loved too once. She was, you know, she grew up, she saw her parents fight a lot. I didn't see my parents really in discord a lot. Didn't mean they didn't have it, right? But I didn't see it all the time. And my best friend saw, which can be healthy, I think, and unhealthy in certain ways too. And my best friend saw her parents in constant discord. And I remember when she was like, you know, she's raising her kids, and she was telling her husband, like, I do not want to fight in front of my kids. I do not want to fight in front of my kids. And her husband said something that I'm like, oh, that was amazing. He was like, no, I want to teach them healthy discord. Like, I do want to have disagreements in front of them so they can like learn healthy discord.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's so smart. Like, because you're going to have it, you know?
Yeah.
And you're going to have disagreements with your kids. You know, I'm not there yet because he's 6 months old. And, you know, of course, he could do no wrong at this moment.
Of course not.
But yeah, I love that. I love, you know,
just be tender
really
with
cool way to
yourself
put it.
and with the process.
Yeah.
Just from where I sit, you know, almost 20 years later, like, oof, you embrace your humanness.
And maybe he'll become a pinball wizard. Who knows?
And maybe he will become a maybe,
So-
but maybe not in the way
Not
that
that
Tommy
way.
became a
that
pinball
way.
wizard. How about no?
Yeah, nah.
So where can we find you? How do we connect with you? Hear your music and everything?
So on Instagram, we're Big Sur Bound Official. I think Big Sur Bound was taken probably. So we're the official ones.
That's right.
And my Instagram is just my name, Alison Luff, ALISONLUFF. And yeah, you can find me there. And I'm not great with social media. I go in my waves of when this is right for me and when it's not.
Yeah, good for you.
Do I want to share? Do I not want to share? Nah, I don't want to share. But with our music, we got to be better about it. And I'm hoping that we play out more. And so, especially now that the show is closing, and it's an opportunity to do that, and that will all be posted on both of our social medias. So.
I love it. Thank
So
you
fun.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Allison. It was really great to get to meet you. Congrats on your sweet baby. And
Thank
you were
you.
amazing in Tommy in
Thanks.
Chicago. I'm so delighted that I got the chance to see you and see the show.
And you're amazing in Tommy in New York. I saw you
Thank
there
you.
too.
I know, I haven't
We've
seen
It
you
you
was
in both.
really awesome talking to y'all. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank
you.
you. Well, tell your friends
this
to come
is cool
listen.
you guys are doing. Yeah,
All right,
I
Allison,
will.
take
I will
care.
for sure. Thank you for having me.
I love how zen she is. How she's like, yeah, no, I have no problem saying no. First of all, she didn't say saying yes. She said say no. I was like, okay, badass. But also just sort of really trusting that the process is taking her in the right place, and her body and her intuition. And man, I wish more people could tap into that. What a gift.
And I did not know this. I already interviewed her years ago. Like I started out, I mentioned, actually, I don't think it was recording. Before we started recording, I reminded her that I interviewed her on my solo pod years ago for Heels. And she had not brought up her story with her husband getting married after a week.
I know.
And they're still together 8 years later with a kid and happy. And like, that's just phenomenal.
Like happy.
Talk about trusting
Yeah.
your intuition.
Yeah.
Or following your
Yeah.
intuition. Insane.
It's beautiful.
Insane. And she says no to big things just because she feels she needs to. And then right around the corner, something else falls in her lap. I think she's got like some divine channel to something that I wish I had.
Absolutely. She absolutely does. And yes, of course, Allison, if you're listening this far, I want to read your human design chart. Of course I do. There are things I know. There are things I know for sure just by talking to her. But it was lovely. And, you know, it's a bummer that Tommy is closing so soon, but she's been doing this role now for quite some time. And so things happen, you know, the way they want to. I can't wait to see what she does next.
Yeah. Maybe it's Blacklist. I don't know where that credit came from, but
Take it out of the...
maybe it's
We're gonna take it out of the written bio.
Yeah, don't take it- don't leave it in the written bio.
Show notes
but we can leave it in here for the lulls. Leave it in the audio.
for the lulls.
In the
Okay.
lulls. The raffle
You know who would make fun of you for that?
everyone.
James Harkness.
James Harkness and so
Everyone.
many other people. But you know what?
No, this is super
IDK.
random. This is super random, but I just listened to Karma,
Chameleon?
which is Boyd George's. Boyd George's most recent memoir,
Oh.
and he said, "Lol," whenever he. Like it's, as James would say, this goes back to our very first episode ever. As James would say, instead of just laughing,
Whoa.
Lol.
Lol. Lol. Act lol. I do act lol. If I'm actually laughing out loud, I type act lol. Because I want you to know it's real and legit. Act lol. That's something that my bestie Matt started years ago, and I just tagged onto it.
Oh,
Act lol.
that's funny.
Act lol. Okay. Well, if you're act lolling, how can they reach out and tell us about it, Heather?
They can. You know, we are on the socials.
We are.
And we are on Instagram and Threads at Was It Chance, and we engage. It's just us here on the back end saying hi. I know, right? Doing the robot, which you can't see Alan attempting to do, but
the
that is what he's trying to do.
Shouldery rolly. There we go.
The shouldery rolly thing.
Yeah.
You can email us. It's wasitchancepodcast@gmail.com. Is that right?
That's right.
I never send our
That's
email.
right.
I don't know
Was It
what our
Chance
email
Podcast.
address is. And find us on the web at wasitchance.com. Wherever you're listening to the show, do us a favor and go and give that 5-star review. Tell us what you love about it. Subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. We work really hard and we hope that you appreciate it. And as always, we're really grateful that you are here with us today. So, folks, you've been listening to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm Alan Seals.
We'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye-bye.